Hey everybody out there, thank you for tuning in to the R Mars Creators Outlet. I have a very special guest today. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I am going to stumble over all his accreditations and how important he is. So let me go ahead and introduce
Not important at
all. Introduce to you Vince Fong.
Well, thank you for having me. So my name is Vince Fong. I'm the local assemblyman for the area, 34th Assembly District. So I represent the area in the state legislature, so Kern County. My district goes from Fraser Park up to Bakersfield, about the majority of Bakersfield, then I go west to Taft, east through to Tehachapi to Ridgecrest. So I'm elected by the people of this community to represent our area in the state house. Born and raised in Bakersfield, went to all local schools, Castle, Sandrini, West High School, Thompson, then West High School, then went away to college, went to UCLA, went to Princeton. I got my master's and came back, and so I've been in politics and government for a while. I got my start interning for Congressman Bill Thomas. Went to D.C., worked on the Hill, doing trade policy. Came back to Bakersfield after I graduated grad school, and then kind of got plugged into the community. Kevin McCarthy was a great mentor of mine. Kind of taught me how important it was to give back, and then worked for Congressman Thomas for a couple of years. Worked for Kevin McCarthy for 10 years, and then the chance to run for office opened up in 2016, and a number of people in the community encouraged me to run, and I ran and I won, and so that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of my career.
That was actually really good. It's like almost you've done this before. So I wanted you on the show because I see you do a lot in this community. You do a lot for you're with one party. So what party are you with?
So I'm a Republican, and I chose to be a Republican just because I believe in limited government. I want to empower the individual, let entrepreneurs compete, and let them innovate. And so I believe that the Republican Party is the party that allows that environment to foster.
No, and I agree with you on that part. I've lived in California my entire life, and I've run into issues as a business owner that I wish I didn't have to. That's maybe one thing we'll dive into a little bit later in the show. But as a Republican, I wanted to show people, you're human. We had a little joke right before the show started. I had shared with you while doing research for the show, I had found that someone accused you of being a lizard person. And so we did a little bit of research on our own.
I've been called a lot of names, but I haven't been called that one.
Yeah, and because people don't they just see your sound bites off of the news. They just see they don't get to talk to you as a person. And I've had the opportunity to do that. And every time I talk to you, I always laugh and we always have a good time. So, the R Mars Creators Outlet wants to officially dub you as a human. Okay. So just in case of our listeners are wondering, yes, he is 100% human.
100% human.
Yes. So we're going to go ahead and get him a printout of that certificate, and hopefully he'll hang it in his office somewhere.
Happy to do it.
And and so as being human, you are very compassionate about this community. I've seen you at multiple events, even on the same day.
Sure.
So one question I wanted to ask you is, how do you balance your life at this point? Because people think, you're at a certain level in your career. I would say you're operating at a very high level. How do you balance your career along with your personal life at this point?
Well, it's different. I mean, it's certainly difficult. Everyone's looking for that work-life balance. I am not married, and so I don't have a family that a lot of people do have to commit to and to take care of, and so that I think allows me more flexibility than other folks. So you mentioned that how there's a human side. I mean, regardless of party affiliation or anything else, everyone who is engaged in public life now has their own challenges and has to balance them. My roommate in the assembly, he represents the Central Coast. And
poor him.
Yeah, he's got Paso Robles and Atascadero and San Luis Obispo. He has 4 children. From the ages of 13 to 3.
Wow.
And so you juxtapose both of us, and I see him trying to juggle being a husband and a father and a legislator, and then he's also a local attorney in town. So everyone has their challenges. For me, I love being out in the community. I probably have some really bad FOMO. And so, for me, the only way that I think as elected officials we learn about what people care about is that we have to be out in the community. being
Exactly.
being in a bubble, being in if you stay in your office, you don't learn anything. And
Exactly.
so, being out there and talking to people and seeing what people are passionate about, and we have a really generous, amazing community. And I encourage everyone, there's always something going on. And so whether it's a 5K run or a charity event or something going on downtown or church organizations in our faith community are very active. And so there's always something going on, and I learn something new every day. That's the best part about my job. I was speaking to an 8th grade class this morning, and one of the students asked me about, what's the best part of what I do, and it's that it's going out and talking to people, and and people will stop me on the street. The great thing about our community is people will stop me whether I'm at Eureka or a Starbucks or whatever, and they'll share their opinion, and that's part of the great thing about the job.
And that's one thing I appreciate about you is that you will listen no matter if it's good or bad. And I've seen people talk to you about challenge, a lot of the hot topics we have in our area in Kern County. And every time you're sitting there listening, you're absorbing everything, and you're not just shaking your head. You're actually in a conversation with people.
Oh, sure. Well, no person, no party, no organization has a monopoly on good ideas.
Yeah.
And so if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And, for me, we're always looking for solutions. And, for those of us who are in government, it's always interesting when you question authority or you question why people do things. And a lot of times people, just do things because it's always been done that way.
Yeah.
And they've never really challenged why that is. And so for us, I like to think that I represent the next generation of leaders in our community. And it's like, well, just because it's been done that way for 20, 25, 30 years doesn't mean we have to keep doing it. And let's do something different.
And I think that's where the other side of this gets the mistake is that they think I'm a millennial.
Sure.
So everyone thinks that millennials are super left, super far that way. They're socially, they just want everything to happen. They want socialism, and that's not the case. And I'm finding that out as I'm growing and I'm becoming an adult. Cause I'm 30 years old now, but I still feel like I'm becoming an adult.
Yeah.
But as I'm growing and getting older and having my career set, I'm like, I don't want that stuff. You're really going to focus on this minuscule part. I'm not saying they're below anybody else or anything, but just they're throwing too far left where they're forgetting people about me. Yeah. I'm centrist, you know.
Millennials are probably the most entrepreneurial generation that we're going to have. And I actually just was reading this book. It's called The Fourth Turning, and it talks about how their generations repeat itself. And the argument of this book, I guess one of the major theses of it was to say that the millennial generation has a lot of similarities to the greatest generation in terms of the wanting to do things bigger than themselves and wanting to give back. And so that's a good thing. And so we should foster that. Now, what those solutions and what those policy ideas are, those are all in flux. We are all experienced. We are, or at least for us, our views, every human being and every person, we're a product of our life experience. And so for that, people's views of society and politics are always changing. And when you get married, when you get your first job, when you buy your first house, when you
see your first tax bill.
Exactly. All those, and you start your first business, all those things become, that's information that you process and it becomes your frame of how you view things.
Yeah, and that's like I told you, like I'm a centrist. I see both sides, equally. I don't want to be left or right. I want to be what's right for our nation, for our community, for everything.
Exactly.
And that's why I really value a lot of things that you say, because I don't feel like you're attacking anybody. I don't feel like you're ever crossing the line like, oh no, I'm always right. Like, no, you're like, hey, let's listen to that.
Yeah.
Let's truly. And then I just hate the fact, like my generation, a lot of times they'll just sit there and do this and no, you're wrong. Like, what are you talking about? Like I don't ever want to be in a conversation where I'm like fighting.
Yeah.
I'd rather open-mindedly talk about what is the issue.
We should look, we're going to have debates. I encourage whatever your views are, have a vigorous debate.
Yeah.
But all of us are in a results-oriented business. We have to solve problems.
Yeah.
That's why we run for office. And it doesn't matter if you're in state office. It doesn't matter if you're in federal office. It doesn't matter if you're city council, school board, on a nonprofit board. Like that's the goal. The goal is to whatever your mission, whatever the challenge is, let's figure out how to solve those problems. And so that's how I approach things. You don't really persuade anybody by calling them names or to, if I want to try to get you on my side, like calling you a name isn't going to get like endear you to me. And
No.
it's the same on the other side too. So, now there are issues that are highly controversial and people get passionate about it.
It seems that they focus on those more than the ones we need to solve.
And that's the thing. I mean, like the issues, I think, for us as a state and a country, they're getting big.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
well, we have some huge challenges facing our state and our community. And so, yeah, I want people to be passionate, but we can disagree and not be disagreeable.
Yes.
And that's how I approach it. I only can control what I do, and I would encourage other people to do the same thing. But when people get emotional or passionate about things, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But don't get to the point where you can't solve a problem.
It's funny because, like I told you, I'm a centrist myself. I am pro oil and I am pro environment.
Sure.
And people think that those are two opposite sets of the spectrum, but they're not. Because I've seen myself and my own experience living in Kern County have seen more environmental work from the oil companies than any other industry.
There are a lot of false choices. I mean, people try to create these false choices that somehow like you can't be, pro energy, pro oil, and then be pro environment, but you can. I mean, look, our local industries do a phenomenal job of preserving the environment, and of course, I remind my colleagues who visit Kern County all the time. It's like, if you look at Kern County, yes, we are a large oil producer, but we also have the largest wind farms in America, probably in the world. We have the largest solar farms. In the solar projects, we have geothermal. We do renewable bigger than anybody. So when I remind people about Kern County, it's like, we're not just oil, we're energy.
Yes.
So if you want to learn about renewable energy, you should come to see us and our projects.
Exactly. And that's it's so funny because they think that we are the feeling I get from LA, San Francisco, a lot of these major metropolitan areas, they think that we're a bunch of monkeys just digging holes, getting oil, and no, I'm like, what do you guys have? Like, what you guys have? Yes, the reason why you're the major areas is because shipping was huge in the turn of the century. That's why you guys are so big. But if it was based off of food, if it was based off of energy, if it was based off of a lot of these factors, we would be a lot bigger.
Exactly. Well, you look at the things that look, our iPhones, everything made of plastic, our sunscreen, our medical devices, the tires in our car, the plastics in our car.
The stuff they make the solar panels out of.
I mean, those are all things that are petroleum based.
Yeah.
And so, that's where it's like, if you take a step back and like, okay, like what is the importance of the petroleum industry? Well, that's that. We use things in our daily life that are made of that. And so you can be for everything, and of course, if you think long term, and I'll say this as someone who's elected, and we run every 2 years, like as elected officials, we think too short term. What do we want our state? What do we want our community to look like in 30 years?
Yeah.
And our once we change our perspective, the decisions we look at and we make are different. So Bakersfield is going to double in population in 20 years, probably. At least that's what the estimates are. Well, then how do we power our community? Like, we're going to have more houses, more cars, more families, who are going to be cooking meals and turning on televisions. Like, we're going to use, and we have more businesses hopefully in our community. We're going to need to keep the lights on and power our economy. And so how do we do that? Well, part of it is going to be, the oil industry, and part of it's going to be renewable, and we need it all.
Yeah. And that's a great segue to my next point I want to talk to you about was water. You say population is going to grow within the next 20, 30 years, it's going to double. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand, especially in the state, especially with the Delta and everything going on, we are a desert, but we produce a large amount of produce for the rest of the country and even other countries. We produce a lot of energy for the rest of the country and a lot of other countries. I think that a lot of times we get lost in the shuffle because we're so used to just sitting down and being quiet and not voicing our opinion. We're from Kern County. We'll just keep doing what we've been doing. And I think that's where some of the issues are coming into play and some of the things you're bringing to light, because we need to have a voice. We need to have a great We need to make more noise, I think.
Yeah.
And you've been doing that since I've met you. You've been going to these events. You've been bringing up these issues, especially water.
Yeah.
And that was one of the issues I see coming up is that, our aquifer is really getting beat up.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I don't want to say, oh, ag's doing it. No, it's not ag, it's everything. We're not building, the state is building a train instead of building these water storage facilities. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, we need to build more water holding than we do this train.
So it goes back to our ongoing theme in the conversation. But yeah, I mean, we need to plan better as a state, and water is just a critical infrastructure need. I mean, look, people take for granted when we turn on the faucet that water shows up and comes out and we use it. So we need to store more water.
Yes.
I mean, we're going to, and Mother Nature blesses our state every year with water in the northern part of California. The challenge is that we got a lot of populations in the southern part, in Central Valley, and going all the way to San Diego. And so, how do you get water from the north to the south? Well, that's the challenge. When people look at our water system, they don't realize that it goes through a very sensitive area. So how do we move the water around, and how do we store it? And so, we need to build more reservoirs and water storage projects. And we have 3 major ones. I think we're looking at Shasta, raising the Shasta Dam, building Sites Reservoir close to the Orville area. And then we need to build Temperance Flat south of the Delta. And if we did all that, we would be setting the stage for having enough water stored for our state for decades.
Yep.
And so in times of drought, we can use the water. It's like Aesop's fable, right? You store in the winter, and then you use it whenever you need to. Mm-hmm. So it's common sense. But when we don't make the decisions properly, which we haven't done over the past decade or so, and we haven't invested in water storage, when drought comes, and then all of a sudden we're running out of water, and it's like, well, we're not pumping it, we're not moving it around, and people get upset. And it's like, well, so that's the thing. If we make the right decisions now, we'll set the stage for a very prosperous, 20, 30 years with enough water, with enough energy. We got to build homes, we have to build housing. I mean, right now we're at this tipping point where we have these huge decisions to make, and do we have the political will to make those decisions?
Yeah, and I love the fact that a lot of people on the opposite side of the aisle, I don't even want to say that. The people who have an opposing opinion, they think that, global warming is going to get us. Global warming, and I'm thinking like, well, that's why in the 1970s you said we're all going to freeze to death. It changes year to year, and I understand
the climate changes. The humans have an impact on it, but we all support clean air and clean water and a clean environment, and so that's where we all got to find that common ground.
Exactly.
There are Republicans and Democrats that agree with me, and so, but is that coalition big enough to get things through the legislature? Right now, it isn't, and so we got to go out and educate the public and say, look, building more water storage is a smart thing to do. It's good it just makes common sense. That's like when we talk about high-speed rail. High-speed rail, the total cost of high-speed rail is approaching $100 billion, right? And so, however I don't support the project. I think it's a waste of money. But let's just say, if I took $10 billion out of that project, I can build all these water storage projects. I mean, it would be the best investment in terms of water infrastructure, and it would set the stage for decades, right? I could build a new UC campus. I could build a new Cal State campus. I could build more hospitals. I could build more schools. So the choice is not just do high-speed rail, but because in and of itself, I don't think the project is good. But when you spend $1 on a project that won't work, right? That's $1 you don't spend on something else.
Yes, and no return.
And that's where I'm trying to. That's, I think, the key component in the explanation and debate to the public is like, look, you have all these priorities that you want to do, whether it's healthcare, education, roads, water. Let's invest in those. But if we continue to spend money and waste money on a project that you probably won't use and won't be successful, right? That means you're not investing in those things. And that's the whole idea of the importance of the budgeting process and why people need to get engaged.
Yeah, and well, what I was going with that is that they're saying that that's what's going to get us this climate change is going to get us, and I'm not even. I've seen so many videos on that lately, but I truly feel that if we don't fix this water issue, we have energy right now, but water is going to be the next big thing in the next 10 years, because they're going to come out with, just like Arizona, you can't have grass in your front yard. You can't. Yeah, you can do all these little things, but the truth is, we need more water.
Yeah, and we can clean the environment, and we can and we can store more water. I mean, that's the whole idea. Is like you can do multiple things. They're not if we make the right investments, then yeah, we'll help the environment, and we'll have water for people to use.
Yeah, and another thing you just said a little while ago about spending the money the right way, I had a pretty good laugh. I think it was a couple of days ago when the governor was like, "Why is gas so expensive around here?" It's like I'm watching Seinfeld. What's the deal with this gas prices? And I'm like, it's you. The gas tax is so high in California. Yeah. That's why my grandpa lives in Virginia. He loves going to get gas. He sends me a picture every time he goes to get gas. He's like, "Hey, let me show you what my Suburban. I put in 25 gallons and look how much it cost me." And I drive a Subaru and I'm putting in about the same amount.
Yeah.
Cost wise, but a lot less gas.
We as a state have to look in the mirror. I mean, I think it's frustrating because, and especially for me in having a front row seat to, all these debates. And, I drafted the alternative. I mean, I wrote the bill that basically funded all our roads, funded mass transit, did all the things that we needed to do, invested in our road infrastructure without the need to raise taxes. And so it's one of those things as people get more and more frustrated with the gas tax increase, is that it's personal to me, but it's also, I mean, it has a real consequence. And I think the challenge for us as elected officials, especially for those in the state, is to get Californians to focus on what the state does. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to focus on what Congress is doing and what's happening in Washington, D.C. They're doing very important things.
Yeah.
And people want to focus on what's going on in the local community, very important as well. But when people talk about like public safety, homelessness, our roads in disrepair, the need for more housing, all the price of everything and how expensive it is to live and work in California, like all those things, all those massive issues, right, are driven by decisions made in the state legislature. And so, I have this kind of, I jokingly call it my Starbucks, my Starbucks theory, which is like, I challenge everyone to go to Starbucks, grab 10 people randomly, and ask them what they know about what the state is doing, and see what they know. And a lot of times, they'll mention some things, but like a lot of times people don't know what the state legislature is doing unless it's until after something happens, like until a bill gets passed, like the gas tax, and they're like, "Oh, I'm really upset about it." But like leading up to it, we need more people engaged in the process before things get signed into law, and so that we can change it for the better and maybe stop some things. But, how do you hold an institution accountable, right, if you don't know what they're doing? And so, part of that's why I think when people hear me talk about like the importance of transparency and getting people engaged and knowing what their government is doing, is that's the reason why.
Yeah. And that's what's so funny, is that our founding fathers wanted us to know what the government was doing.
That's right.
And when people are like, "Oh, I don't care, they're just politicians," like, no, it's not. You have people like yourself fighting for the things that you care about every day. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're in the oil fields, whether you're in agriculture, there's people fighting for what you need done for you to succeed.
And you don't look, and I tell people, you don't need to agree with me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's your government.
Yeah.
The people in our community loan me the power every 2 years. And every 2 years they get to choose whether they send me back to Sacramento or not. But it's your government. I mean, you're my boss. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't know what your government is doing, like, that is problematic. I mean, when people talk about, the problems with the DMV and high-speed rail, and I mean, you pick your project, right, that people are frustrated with, and it's like, well, you deserve to know what's going on. Like when we try to expose things that are happening in the state government, whether it be, you pick your project, right, and people get mad about it. And it's like, well, yeah, you should be mad about it because that's your money. Like all the money you send to Sacramento is not my money.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's paying fees and taxes into the state government. That you should be really concerned because that's your money.
Well, the other thing you talk about, like you said, the DMV. one of my favorite things to tell a socialist is that they truly believe in this
Single payer
system. And for myself, I don't agree with that. But I always tell them, I go, so you must really love going to the DMV. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, well, look, that's what healthcare is going to be like. It's going to be you sitting in a room. Okay, you're almost dying. You come to the window. That's how I feel it's going to be. And they're like, no, it'll be so much better. We can improve. I was like, well, let's get a system that's better than what we have. Then we'll switch. Not let's try this. Let's switch everybody to this. And if it doesn't work, oh well. No, we need to keep what we have because people come from other countries for this healthcare. And California is looking at wanting to do that themselves, and I'm like, California can't even afford to keep the streets clean. You're not saying that you're going to do your job, but it's the truth. It's you have a lot of people who are in really bad situations because of whether it's homelessness, drugs, or anything like that. Let's focus on building our communities up.
On principle, everyone should be concerned of giving one entity all the power. And if you're going to give one entity all the power in healthcare or education, or you pick your issue. This is why I'm always hesitant and why I'm a Republican is that you want competition. You want people, like if you like even just buying your iPhone, right?
Yep.
Like you get choices,
Yep.
AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile. You get to choose and you get to pick the best deal for you. And the fact that you have businesses competing with each other makes them more likely to give you a better product. If you didn't have any competition in the healthcare space, well, then you've got no choice.
Yep.
So you break your arm, you go and get you get it fixed, right? Well, who determines the price of that?
Yeah.
Or who gets paid back? And that's the thing. It's like if you're a doctor, right, and it costs you $200 to fix a broken arm, right? But the government says, you know what? I'm only going to pay you $100 for that service.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the doctor is like, wait, I can't stay in business.
Yeah.
And then there's no more doctors. People aren't going to go into to become doctors or nurses or whatever. Well, you can't have a medical industry, or you can't have a healthcare industry with no doctors and no nurses and no hospitals. It doesn't work that way.
No, you got to find the value. You got that's the biggest. I just had a podcast with Michael Roberts from Small Business Celebration, and that's the thing I talked about. He said, how do you stay in business? So what do you tell people to grow their business? Find value in what you do. You as an assemblyman. I don't want to gender assemblyman.
Assemblyman, member. It's all good.
So I don't want to like box you in because you've done so much and you're finding new solutions. That's one thing you talked about. How do you work with people that don't agree with what you're even though if this is the right project to do and that this is going to help the state in the future or even present, how do you get that point across to somebody who's basically covering their ears and saying la 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 la?
Well, it's different. I mean, it's difficult. Different perspectives. You got to look for ways that they'll understand where you're coming from. I mean, a lot of the issues that are like on taxes, on regulations. I mean, there has to be an impact in their community for them to see it. And a lot of times if they have someone that like a major industry or a major business that leaves their community, it's like, well, they've left their community for a reason. Either taxes. Yeah, taxes are too high, regulations are too high. I mean, and we all now know people who have moved out of state to Texas, to Colorado, to Nevada.
I'm jealous.
and those are real consequences, and so like these are consequences of decisions that are being made in the state house. Now, a lot of issues I think within the state legislature are not Republican Democrat.
No.
I mean, they're big city, small city, urban, rural. And so for those issues, and I would say that most of the issues kind of fall in that category, that's where you're trying to find some common ground to say, look, the homeless individual in LA is just as and the homeless person in Bakersfield, right? Just as important people. The challenges are the same. Now, how do we address that? Now, the reasons why they're homeless in LA may be different than the reasons why they're in Bakersfield, but the issue themselves, we can find a solution to those things. I'm trying to think like roads. your road in Bakersfield, my road in Bakersfield is just as important as the road in San Francisco, except for it may cost more money to build a road in San Francisco than it is in Bakersfield. But we all agree that we got to build more roads, and we all agree that we need to help those who are downtrodden and homeless in the state. So we all want healthcare access. I mean, so in principle, we agree on the what we want. It's like, how do we get there? They may want to increase taxes or do all these things, and I may have a different idea of and build more hospitals and whatnot. And so we just have to make that's where the debate happens, and that's why we have the process that we have.
And so, do you find it's easier to give just numbers and facts, or do you have to kind of put it into an emotional conversation for someone to understand you? Let's say, because I'm good old country boy from Kern County. I don't understand. Like when I talk to somebody from LA, they think that we don't know, we don't have a pulse on the economy, and I think it's vice versa.
It's different. Well, it depends. I mean, you got to do both. I mean, numbers. You have to outline like economics and the numbers but then there's a human side to all these issues.
Yeah.
And so some individuals are moved by emotion. Some individuals are moved by facts and figures and charts and all, but they go together. You can't have you don't want it to be so focused on numbers that you forget that there's actually a human face involved in it. So when we talk about like healthcare or homelessness, right, it's like we're dealing with human beings. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're funding important projects and we're trying to get things done so that people's lives are better. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of the day, that's what we always got to remember is that, we're talking about our fellow Californians and how we can improve the lives and the quality of life of their community.
Yeah. And honestly, I've kind of been dreaming. I don't know if it's going to happen because there is big polar shifts in between years, but I would like to see another Republican governor here, kind of like to balance everything out. Not to say, oh, well, yeah. No, I think there needs to be a balance because California just seems to be tilting. It doesn't seem to have a balance anymore.
The pendulum always swings back and forth. I mean, as a Republican, right? I think a lot of Republicans in California are certainly frustrated and have anxiety of the future of our state. And when we have to do our job of outlining our solutions. But as the public begins to see what happens if the status quo continues, whether it's the rise of crime, the challenge of homelessness, the cost of living in our state, as those issues continue to grow, right, they're going to want to change. I mean, no one accepts the status quo if the status quo doesn't help them. Or they don't see anything positive happening. 54% of Californians believe our state is on the wrong track. And this is at a time where our economy continues to grow. They just don't feel that anything is improving. And it's because it isn't. Yeah. And so at some point, they're going to say, you know what, I just think that we need to change.
Yeah.
And then they'll vote and for new people and the pendulum will swing back. Now, when new people get elected, let's say we get a new governor or a Republican governor in the future or a Republican legislature, then we're gonna have to solve those problems that exist, and those problems could be so large that we're gonna make some really difficult decisions.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's what we get. That's what we run to do. Is that we got to solve those problems. Yeah,
because I know I tend to make things for entertainment, but I see like what's that movie, Escape New York? LA's gonna break off and it's gonna become this prison island, and I'm just like, man, every time I go to LA, I'm a Disneyland guy. Yeah. Me and my wife love Disneyland, and we love going over there. But then for the last 3 miles going down the 5, it looks really bad. Like, well, not the last 3. I think it's a little bit before that, right before all the construction, because you can see all the tents along the freeway, and you're just like, wow, like what is going on here?
I've traveled up and down the state over the past, on my second term, so 2.5 years, or 3 years. And it doesn't matter what city I'm in, whether it's San Diego, Fresno, Bakersfield, San Luis Obispo, San Francisco. I mean, the amount of frustration that exists within society is just continues to grow.
Yeah.
And at some point, I don't know what that tipping point is, where it's like, look, I'm so frustrated. I'm just gonna throw everybody out, and and we need some new leadership. Now, for us, like for me, that's kind of what it's like. What's our vision? I got to lay out what our solution is. What are our solutions to homelessness and traffic congestion? and cost of living and so yeah, we got to change some of the laws. Let's build more houses. Let's build more apartments. Let's invest more in mental health and behavioral health and drug addiction programs so that we can deal with those who are on the street. Let's build more highways and roads. Let's build more water infrastructure. I mean, all those things, like that's what I believe would make our state a better place. Now, the folks who don't agree, well, they don't agree, and then we're going to have that debate of ideas, and then the public will decide.
So we're going to be closing up right here, but the last couple minutes we have, what Vince Fong, if you got everything going on your way and you won the lottery and you won all your bills and everything like that, what would you say maybe probably one of the most important things you have coming up? Like what would really help the state out that you got going on?
Well, I've made me king for a day. I would say that I think we have to streamline some of our laws in terms of the bureaucracy and the environmental regulations, and that hold back the building of roads and water infrastructure and houses and all the basic necessities that aren't sexy things that people want to talk about, but we need to do. So I think number one, we got to do that. Two, I think we got to lower the cost of living in the state of California.
Amen.
So
wait, was that? That's what.
There you go. I mean, so we have to, lower the tax burden, lower the regulatory burden. I think so. I think doing that, if I did those two things, and that was the end of my career, I think my career would be successful. And I think thirdly, from an insider point of view, but it would benefit the public at large, that we have to bring more transparency to the state of California.
Yes.
And so I think, providing more accountability, reining in some of those state agencies, pulling the curtain aside and allowing the public to know how's your money being spent, and give you direct access to our budget so that you know how much is being spent down to the penny. Making it easier for people to file public records requests against within the state agencies, so that what the DMV is doing and what the High Speed Rail Authority is doing, and you pick your agency.
Yeah.
Let the public in. I think if I could do those three things, I think I would say those are the most important things, in my opinion, that could be done to improve our state.
And they're not things that can't be done. That's I love that. I love the
they're
fact
80% issue. I mean, like
yeah.
if I make I make this case to the public all the time, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But though in the legislature, we are in a bubble, and there are special interest groups that punch above their weight up in the legislature, and so
I love that.
So it takes for us to change, or for the legislature to change, and for us to have more allies. We need an external force. We need we need the public to send a message to the legislature. And so that's why it's important for everyone to get involved and to participate and to vote, because these initiatives and all these, and when people get reelected or don't get reelected, like those are all messages and signals to the legislature, whether the people are happy or not.
Yeah.
And if people start losing their jobs and initiatives get changed and the Constitution gets amended to make all these improvements, those are all like, wait a minute, the public is sending us a message that they're not happy. And so we should now respond in kind and do the things that we need to do. But right now, the upsetting thing for me is that the public rejects rent control. They want public safety. They want all these things. They want lower taxes. They want lower regulations. But then the legislature says, I hear what you're doing. I hear what you're saying, Mr. and Mrs. Californian, but we're going to do the opposite.
Yeah.
And so at some point, the public's going to say, enough is enough. You're not listening to us, and so we're gonna send you a message.
I think you had some really good points on here, and I hope that our listeners really, really thought about what you're saying, because the thing is that you're not a money-hungry, grab cash guy. You're a community guy, because you know that if this business comes in, that's job opportunities for Mr. and Mrs. California. You know that releasing all these horrible, environmental controls that they have on things is really going to help out, because it's like, a project here in the people in other parts of the country don't understand. A project here may be thousands of dollars more or double the cost because a little rat ran across the right there. So now I thank you for your time. Yeah. I really appreciate you coming in, and I hope that our listeners really learned a lot today. And I'm I'm tongue-tied, but I really hope you get another chance to improve the state because you've done a lot for our community.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'll come back anytime, but
Yeah.
we need everyone participating, engaging, and I think I'm optimistic that we have better days in our state, and I think that and I haven't lost hope yet.
Awesome. Well, you got my vote.
Appreciate it.
All right, sir. Thank you very much
Thank
for coming
you.
on the show, and stay tuned, guys. We got more coming.